Good evening. I'm Alex Truth, and tonight on Truth Report, we are tracking 4 stories that reveal a world splitting apart at the seams. On one side, nations racing to build the clean energy future. On the other, a superpower that just told the rest of the planet it doesn't need them anymore.
And I'm Maya Clarity. We're going to take you inside Trump's State of the Union address, where the president laid out a vision that Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has called a world -1. We'll examine what happens when the world's largest economy decides to go it alone on climate, trade, and everything else.
Then we're heading to Florida, where state lawmakers are pushing a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit on e-bikes, a move that critics say is less about safety and more about killing one of the most promising forms of green transportation in America. We'll follow the money and the politics behind this growing national trend.
From there, we turn to Sweden, where Volvo Group just posted blockbuster profits and is plowing that money into scaling up electric heavy trucks. This is the decarbonization of long-haul freight happening in real time, and it's happening faster than most analysts predicted.
And we'll close with a breakthrough that could reshape the entire electric vehicle supply chain. IEEE Spectrum reports on a new electrochemical process for refining battery-grade lithium that's cleaner, cheaper, and faster than anything the industry has seen. If it scales, it solves one of the biggest bottlenecks standing between us and an electrified future. Let's get into it.
We begin with the State of the Union, Alex, and I want to start with a phrase that I think historians will remember long after the applause lines are forgotten. World -1. That's how Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney described the emerging global order after Trump's address on Tuesday night.
And Carney didn't say that casually, Maya. He said it at the World Economic Forum in Davos, in what the South China Morning Post described as a stunning speech. The framing is precise and devastating. Not a divided world. Not a multipolar world. A world -1. The entire planet on one side, and the United States standing alone on the other.
According to the South China Morning Post's analysis, Trump's address was long, rambling, and fundamentally oriented toward the November congressional midterm elections. The president claimed America is, quote, back, bigger, better, richer and stronger than ever before. But the real question the article raises is what that means for everyone else.
And from a climate perspective, this is the critical question. Trump's vision of American strength is built entirely on fossil fuel extraction, deregulation, and the wholesale rejection of international climate commitments. When Trump says America is stronger, he means America is pumping more oil, burning more gas, and dismantling more environmental protections than at any point in modern history.
The South China Morning Post frames the central tension perfectly. Is the global economy as a whole bigger, better, richer and stronger? Or is America's gain coming at the expense of the international cooperative frameworks that the rest of the world depends on? The answer, for climate policy, is unambiguous. The United States pulling out of the Paris Agreement for the second time has created a leadership vacuum that no other country has filled.
Let's talk about the tariff dimension, because it's inseparable from the climate story. Trump's aggressive tariff regime isn't just a trade war. It's a green technology war. When you slap tariffs on Chinese solar panels, on European electric vehicles, on imported lithium and battery components, you're not protecting American industry. You're raising the cost of the clean energy transition for American consumers and businesses.
And here's what's so insidious about it. The tariffs are framed as economic nationalism, as protecting American workers. But the industries being protected are overwhelmingly fossil fuel industries. Meanwhile, the clean energy supply chains that the world has spent 2 decades building are being deliberately disrupted. The result is that solar installations slow down, EV adoption stalls, and the fossil fuel incumbents get exactly what they wanted, more time.
The South China Morning Post's framing of World -1 also captures something deeper about the climate crisis. Climate change is, by definition, a problem that requires global cooperation. Greenhouse gases don't respect borders. An emission in Texas warms the atmosphere over Bangladesh. When the world's second-largest emitter decides to go it alone, to reject multilateral frameworks and pursue maximum extraction, it doesn't just hurt America's climate trajectory. It undermines the entire architecture of global climate action.
Who benefits from this world -1 posture? The fossil fuel industry, first and foremost. ExxonMobil, Chevron, the shale producers, they get deregulation at home and tariff walls against clean energy competitors abroad. It's a dual shield. Who loses? Every coastal city facing rising seas. Every farmer watching drought destroy crops. Every community breathing air made worse by rollbacks on emission standards. And every country that was counting on American participation in the Paris framework.
There's a bitter irony here that Carney's framing captures perfectly. Trump claims America is stronger than ever. But a country that isolates itself from the global clean energy transition, that clings to 19th-century fuel sources while the rest of the world builds the industries of the future, is not getting stronger. It's getting left behind. Europe, China, even countries across the global south are investing in renewables, electrification, and green infrastructure. America minus the world is an America that will import tomorrow's energy technology instead of inventing it.
And that's the long game that this State of the Union completely ignores. The clean energy economy is now the fastest growing sector of the global economy. The countries and companies that lead that transition will dominate the economic landscape for the next half-century. Trump's speech was about the next election. The climate crisis is about the next century.
Now we shift to a story that might seem small compared to geopolitics, but reveals the same anti-climate machinery operating at the state level. Electrek reports that Florida is the latest state to advance a bill imposing a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit on e-bikes on shared-use paths. 10 miles per hour. That is barely faster than a brisk jog.
Let's put that number in context, Alex. The average casual cyclist rides at about 12 to 15 miles per hour. A fit commuter cyclist easily hits 18 to 20. So a 10-mile-per-hour e-bike limit doesn't just restrict e-bikes. It effectively makes them slower than regular bicycles. You'd literally go faster on a bike without a motor. That's not regulation. That's prohibition by another name.
According to Electrek, Florida joins a growing list of states reconsidering e-bike regulations on shared-use paths. This is being framed as a safety issue, and there are legitimate safety concerns when heavy, fast e-bikes share narrow paths with pedestrians, joggers, and children. But the response is wildly disproportionate to the actual risk, and that's where this story becomes an investigative one.
Here's the question we need to ask: why 10 miles per hour? Not 15, which would still be slower than most regular cyclists. Not 12, which would match walking speed e-bike modes already common in European regulation. 10. That number wasn't chosen because it optimally balances safety and utility. It was chosen because it makes e-bikes functionally useless for transportation. Nobody is going to buy a $2,000 e-bike to ride it at jogging speed.
And this is part of a broader national trend that Electrek has been tracking. States and cities across the country are reconsidering e-bike regulations, and in many cases, the result is restrictions so severe that they amount to a de facto ban on e-bikes as practical transportation. This is happening at precisely the moment when e-bikes represent one of the most effective tools for reducing transportation emissions.
The climate math on e-bikes is extraordinary. Transportation is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, and the majority of car trips in America are under 5 miles. E-bikes are perfect for replacing those short car trips. They're affordable, they require no new infrastructure, they produce zero direct emissions, and they make cycling accessible to people who might not be able to ride a traditional bike due to age, fitness, or terrain.
Studies have consistently shown that e-bike owners reduce their car usage significantly. In Europe, where e-bike adoption is far ahead of the United States, cities have seen measurable reductions in traffic congestion and transportation emissions directly attributable to e-bike uptake. This is not theoretical. It's happening right now in Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and Paris.
So who benefits from crippling e-bike utility with 10-mile-per-hour speed limits? Follow the money. The automobile industry. The oil industry. Every interest group that profits from Americans being locked into car dependency. E-bikes are a direct threat to the car-centric transportation model that generates trillions of dollars in vehicle sales, fuel purchases, insurance premiums, and road construction contracts.
I want to be clear that we're not dismissing legitimate safety concerns. Pedestrian safety on shared-use paths is important, and high-speed e-bikes do pose risks in those environments. But responsible regulation looks like speed limits of 15 to 20 miles per hour, mandatory speed limiters in pedestrian zones, better path design that separates fast and slow traffic, and education campaigns. It does not look like rendering e-bikes slower than the bicycles they're designed to improve upon.
The Florida bill also fits into a larger pattern of state legislatures responding to intense lobbying. The automobile dealer associations, the petroleum industry, even some cycling advocacy groups that represent traditional cyclists worried about trail access, they all have a seat at the table. The people who don't have a seat? Climate advocates, urban planners, and the millions of Americans who could benefit from affordable, zero-emission personal transportation.
What's particularly frustrating is the timing. As we just discussed, the federal government under Trump is dismantling climate protections at the national level. E-bikes represent exactly the kind of bottom-up, market-driven, grassroots climate solution that doesn't depend on federal action. And now state legislatures are moving to throttle that solution before it can reach its full potential. It's a pincer movement against clean transportation, federal inaction from above and state restriction from below.
If you live in Florida or any state considering similar legislation, pay attention to who is sponsoring these bills and who is funding those sponsors. The e-bike speed limit debate is not really about pedestrian safety. It's about whether Americans will have access to affordable, clean transportation alternatives, or whether they'll remain captive customers of the fossil fuel economy.
Now let's go to a story that shows what happens when a major industrial company actually commits to the energy transition instead of fighting it. CleanTechnica reports that Volvo Group, one of the world's largest heavy truck manufacturers, is channeling its strong profitability directly into the rapid expansion of battery electric and zero-emission heavy trucks.
And this is not a press release promise, Alex. This is happening in the financial results. Volvo Group presented its full year and fourth quarter results for 2025, and the numbers tell a story of a company that is using its dominant position in the European market to fund an aggressive electrification push across long-haul transport, regional distribution, and even mining applications.
Let me emphasize how significant heavy truck electrification is for climate. Heavy-duty trucks represent a relatively small fraction of vehicles on the road, but they account for a massively disproportionate share of transportation emissions. A single long-haul diesel truck can emit over 100 tons of CO2 per year. Multiply that by the millions of heavy trucks operating globally, and you're looking at one of the largest and most stubborn sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the entire economy.
For years, the conventional wisdom was that heavy trucks were the last frontier for electrification. The argument was that batteries were too heavy, too expensive, and couldn't provide the range needed for long-haul operations. Volvo is systematically dismantling that narrative. They're positioning electrification at the center of their decarbonization roadmap, not as a future aspiration but as a current business strategy funded by current profits.
And the business case is becoming compelling. Diesel fuel is one of the largest operating costs for trucking fleets. Electric trucks have dramatically lower fuel costs per mile, simpler drivetrains with fewer moving parts, and lower maintenance requirements. As battery costs continue to decline and charging infrastructure expands, the total cost of ownership advantage for electric trucks is growing every quarter.
What's strategically brilliant about Volvo's approach is using European market leadership as the foundation. Europe has the most aggressive emission standards for heavy vehicles anywhere in the world. The EU CO2 emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles require a 90% reduction by 2040 compared to 2019 levels. That's not optional. It's law. And Volvo is building the trucks to meet those standards while competitors are still debating whether electrification is viable.
The mining application is particularly interesting, Maya. Mining operations are some of the most diesel-intensive industrial activities on the planet. Underground mines in particular have enormous ventilation costs because diesel exhaust is toxic in enclosed spaces. Electric mining trucks eliminate that problem entirely, reducing ventilation requirements, improving air quality for miners, and cutting fuel costs simultaneously. The business case practically writes itself.
Who benefits from Volvo's push? Trucking fleet operators who get lower operating costs and regulatory compliance. Miners who get cleaner, safer working environments. Urban communities along trucking corridors who breathe cleaner air. And the climate, obviously, as every diesel truck replaced by an electric one eliminates roughly 100 tons of annual CO2 emissions.
Who loses? Diesel engine manufacturers who haven't made the transition. Petroleum refiners who depend on diesel demand from the trucking sector. And competitors who dismissed electric heavy trucks as impractical and are now scrambling to catch up as Volvo captures the early mover advantage in what will be a multi-trillion-dollar market transformation.
There's a broader lesson here that connects directly to the State of the Union story. While the US government is pulling back from climate commitments and protecting fossil fuel interests, European companies like Volvo are investing billions in the clean energy transition. They're not doing it out of charity. They're doing it because it's profitable, because regulation demands it, and because they see where the market is heading. The question for American truck manufacturers is whether they'll lead this transition or be disrupted by it.
And this is what real industrial climate leadership looks like. Not greenwashing, not vague pledges for 2050, but taking current profits and investing them in the technology and manufacturing capacity needed to decarbonize one of the hardest sectors in the economy. Volvo is proving it can be done. Now the rest of the industry has no excuse.
Our final story tonight takes us upstream in the electric vehicle supply chain to a breakthrough that could remove one of the most significant bottlenecks standing between us and a fully electrified transportation system. IEEE Spectrum reports on a new electrochemical process for refining battery-grade lithium that promises to be cleaner, cheaper, and faster than conventional methods.
This is a story about a company called Mangrove Lithium, and to understand why their technology matters, you need to understand the current state of lithium refining. Right now, turning raw lithium into the battery-grade compounds needed for EV batteries is expensive, environmentally destructive, and concentrated in a handful of countries, predominantly China, which controls roughly 60% of global lithium refining capacity.
The conventional lithium refining process is a chemical nightmare. It involves massive quantities of sulfuric acid, produces enormous volumes of toxic waste, requires huge amounts of energy, and takes weeks to complete. The environmental footprint of traditional lithium refining is one of the dirty secrets of the clean energy transition. We celebrate the electric vehicle while ignoring the toxic trail left by the battery supply chain.
Mangrove Lithium's approach, as reported by IEEE Spectrum, uses electrochemistry instead of traditional chemical processing. Think of it as using electricity to selectively extract and purify lithium ions from brine or other lithium sources, rather than dissolving everything in acid and trying to separate out what you need from a toxic soup.
The advantages are potentially transformative. Electrochemical refining can dramatically reduce the amount of chemicals needed, shrink the physical footprint of refining operations, cut processing time from weeks to hours, and significantly lower both costs and carbon emissions per ton of battery-grade lithium produced. If it works at scale, it addresses nearly every criticism leveled at the lithium supply chain.
And the strategic implications are enormous, Maya. Right now, the concentration of lithium refining in China represents a massive supply chain vulnerability for the entire Western EV industry. If a geopolitical disruption cuts off access to Chinese refined lithium, EV production across North America and Europe grinds to a halt. A cleaner, cheaper refining technology that can be deployed domestically changes that equation completely.
This is where the story connects to Trump's world-1 posture. The administration talks about energy independence and reshoring critical supply chains, but its actual policies, the tariffs, the deregulation, the fossil fuel favoritism, do nothing to build the domestic clean energy supply chain that true energy independence requires. Mangrove Lithium's technology is exactly the kind of innovation that could give the U.S. genuine lithium refining independence, but it needs supportive policy, research funding, and permitting frameworks to scale.
The environmental benefits extend beyond just the refining process. By making lithium refining feasible in more locations and from more diverse sources, including geothermal brines and recycled batteries, electrochemical processing could reduce the pressure on lithium mining in ecologically sensitive areas like the salt flats of South America and the hard rock mines of Australia. It's not just about making refining cleaner. It's about making the entire upstream supply chain more sustainable.
Who benefits from this breakthrough? EV manufacturers who get a more secure, more affordable supply of battery materials. Consumers who get cheaper electric vehicles. Communities that won't have a toxic lithium refinery in their backyard. And any country that wants to build domestic battery supply chain capacity without the environmental devastation of conventional refining.
Who loses? Chinese refining monopolies that currently control the market through scale and low costs enabled partly by lax environmental standards. And fossil fuel interests who know that every improvement in battery economics accelerates the timeline for EV cost parity with internal combustion vehicles. Cheaper, cleaner lithium means cheaper, cleaner batteries, which means cheaper, cleaner cars, which means less gasoline sold. The petroleum industry understands this supply chain math very well.
It's also worth noting the role of IEEE Spectrum in reporting this story. This isn't a startup press release or a venture capital hype piece. IEEE is the world's largest technical professional organization, and Spectrum is one of the most respected engineering publications on the planet. When they highlight a technology as addressing a genuine bottleneck, the engineering community pays attention. This has real technical credibility behind it.
The lithium refining breakthrough also illustrates a broader truth about the clean energy transition. The obstacles are not primarily technological. They're political and economic. The technology to decarbonize transportation exists and is improving rapidly. What's missing is the political will to support deployment at scale, and the economic framework to ensure that clean technologies can compete on a level playing field with fossil fuels that have enjoyed subsidies and regulatory favoritism for over a century.
So Alex, let's bring all four stories together, because the pattern tonight is impossible to ignore.
We started with Trump's State of the Union and the emergence of what Mark Carney calls a world-1. The United States, the country that should be leading the global clean energy transition, has instead chosen isolation, fossil fuel maximalism, and the deliberate sabotage of international climate cooperation. That's the political backdrop against which every other story tonight unfolds.
Then we went to Florida, where state lawmakers are preparing to cripple e-bikes with a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit. It's a microcosm of the same dynamic playing out at the federal level. A clean, affordable, accessible transportation solution being strangled by regulation that serves the interests of automobile and petroleum industries, not the public.
But then we saw the counterforce. Volvo Group, using its market strength and profitability to aggressively scale electric heavy trucks. This is proof that decarbonization and profitability are not in conflict. The companies that invest in clean technology are building the competitive advantages that will define the next era of industry. Volvo isn't waiting for government permission to decarbonize. They're doing it because the economics demand it.
And Mangrove Lithium's electrochemical refining breakthrough shows that the innovation pipeline is full. The technical barriers that were supposed to make the clean energy transition impossible keep falling. Cheaper lithium refining. Better batteries. Electric trucks that can do the job of diesel. The technology is ready. The question is whether political systems will support it or suppress it.
The thread connecting everything tonight is this: the clean energy transition is no longer a question of whether. It's a question of who leads, who follows, and who gets left behind. Volvo and Mangrove are leading. Florida and the Trump administration are actively trying to hold the country back. And the rest of the world, as Carney warned, is preparing to move forward without the United States.
What makes tonight's story so urgent is the time dimension. Climate change does not wait for political cycles. Every year of delay in emissions reduction locks in more warming, more extreme weather, more economic damage, more human suffering. The storms, the droughts, the fires, they don't care who wins the midterm elections.
And yet the solutions are right here, right now. Electric trucks from Volvo. Cleaner lithium refining from Mangrove. E-bikes that could replace millions of car trips if regulators would let them. The technology exists. The economics work. What's missing is political courage and policy coherence.
If you're watching this and wondering what you can do, here it is. Contact your state representatives about e-bike legislation. Demand that regulations be based on evidence, not industry lobbying. Support companies that are investing in the clean energy transition with your purchasing decisions. And vote for candidates at every level of government who understand that climate action and economic prosperity are the same thing.
The world -1 doesn't have to be our future. But it will be if we let political leaders sacrifice long-term survival for short-term electoral advantage. The rest of the world is building the clean economy of the 21st century. The only question is whether America builds it too, or buys it from everyone else a decade from now.
That's our show for tonight. I'm Maya Clarity.
And I'm Alex Truth. The facts don't care about your politics, but your politics determine whether anyone acts on the facts. Stay informed. Stay engaged. We'll see you next time on Truth.